Greetings. This is Tara Olufemi, your goddess guru, here to share a word of wisdom to assist you on your path to self realization, which is knowing fully who you are, and on your path to self mastery. So, one of the biggest issues I think that people have in knowing fully who they are and mastering themselves is misidentification of themselves with their ego. I've been just a little bit focused on ego here lately because I am working on my own ego. You know, the bottom line is you cannot get away from your ego. When we talk about ego, it's not necessarily talking about arrogance. It's talking about an aspect of the self that involves or that is a part of us so that we can have a physical experience. And so it's a part of our identity. It is a tool, a vehicle. So there's no need to try to get away from the ego. The key is to know what your ego is and how to use it so that you're operating from a more expanded place. The ego is a construct. It's like putting together a building. What is most desirable is that we have healthy ego development. And I believe in past cultures, ancient cultures, I should say, and when people were a little newer to the planet Earth, it was understood somehow that we needed to go through rites of passages. We needed to have in place a system to help people not get lost in their human self, their ego, to help people know the truth of who they are, and so that they could do the work that they came here to do. See, we come here to have experience. You know, some of what people believe about why we're here is just not that deep. It's not that big of a deal. It is deep, but the majority of the reason that we're here is to have the physical experience, to come here and to have this expression, to express ourselves in the physical world. It's really a neat and magical place. This is not an evil place. This is a good place. Anybody who believes that there's a divine higher power, how can you believe that the creation called Earth, physical experience, is evil? It was created by the great divine. This is a magical, wonderful, awesome place to be. The kicker is that most of us don't fully know. And so because many of us are not going through what I consider proper rites of passages, because we're going through something. We're passing through something. But because we're not going through proper rites of passages, our ego is not being constructed in a healthy manner. And so we have beliefs that we consider to be truths that are based on a limited understanding of who we are. We've had experiences happen to us that have created an imbalance in knowing who and what we are. Just putting it frankly, most of us are very far from knowing the truth. And we have an ego that is constructed based on limitations. Somewhat the lie. Because some of us believe the exact opposite of what the truth is. If you think you're despicable, that's the exact opposite of the truth of who and what you are. Okay, so some of us really and truly, our ego is based on lies. I mean, it's just no other way to put it. It's based on lies. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is how how fragile the ego is. The ego feeds off of certain things in order for it to stay in place. the thing is, if we don't know that we're operating according to our ego, then it really and truly becomes our predominant identity. That's why I said we have a misidentification of ourselves with our ego. If you think you are this person, this body, if you don't really know yourself as something beyond this name that was given to you, and your ethnicity or your nationality or your gender, your family, just last name, how, the family you were born into. If you don't know yourself beyond that, if that's just where you are, then the ego is really and truly a very fragile part of ourselves. Because like I said, it's a construct. And so this really fragile aspect of yourself, it's really the weakest part of yourself. And when we are operating according to our ego, it causes us to have to constantly feed it. The spirit is just, it just is. I mean, when you operate according to the truth of who you are, you almost feel like you don't need anything. But when you operate according to your ego, that ego, it is ravenous, okay? And so we will see people, here's examples. We will see people that are very self-centered. We will see people that just need and need and need and need and need. And sometimes you just feel like, oh my gosh, they just need so much of the stuff that's so superficial. And so what I'm beginning to realize, because some of my dealing with my ego is seeing other people's egos and doing my best to not judge them. And it helps me to understand why I do what I do when I can see it in other people sometimes. Because see, what we have to remember is all of the world is a mirror of the self. So what I see in other people, I really, when you point your fingers, I really need to look at these fingers right here. When I'm pointing at someone else, I need to remember these fingers that are pointing back at me, because it's showing me who and what I am. And when I really think about it, what I'm about to say is the truth. That people who are operating according to their ego really are very weak, sad people that we need to have compassion for. Now, I don't put up with crap. Don't get me wrong. I'm not feeding ego. But what I can do is not judge it, because I know that we all are at a place where our ego is being fed. It's looking for us to feed it. The question is, how identified are we with the ego? How do we even get away from it? Number one, you have to ask yourself, why do I do what I do? Is it really based on something that feels, good, and I feel like I'm expansive and I feel like I'm on purpose? Or is it because really and truly I'm feeling fear, I'm feeling like I'm lack? That's one indicator of figuring out, am I feeding ego or not? Ego feeding, a lot of times you're going to feel a little insecure. You're going to feel like if I don't get whatever I need to feed my ego, I just might not make it. The ego is the least of yourself. I really encourage, and I know what it's like to be there. I can talk about egomaniacs because I have been there, and I don't even try to act like I won't ever go back there again. I deal with ego feeding myself daily. Okay? So this is what I'm going to tell you. To be identified with the ego is to have one of the worst experiences ever. That ego is so weak, it cannot stand on its own. It is so important for us to subjugate the ego to the higher self. How do you do that? You do it through consistent spiritual practices. And the more each one of us steps outside of our ego and begins to use the ego as a tool, as a way for us to express the greater part of ourselves that is divine, that is limitless, The more of us that do that, it is going to help other people do the same. Don't be mad at egomaniacs, even though they will drive you crazy. But instead, let's have compassion. Okay, so let's talk about you. If you know you're doing things to feed your ego, then you need to make some other choices. When you see egomania in other people, please make sure that you look at the ego in you. Because what I'm realizing is the less identified I am with my ego, but honestly, the more compassion I have when I see somebody's raging ego. The more identified I am with my ego, the more I want to just get in their face and talk about them and just go toe to toe and explain to them why they need to change who and what they are because it is so inappropriate or I don't like it. Okay. See, when I'm there, that lets me know I need to do something about self. Okay? So let us please realize the ego is a great thing. It's a part of who and what we are, but we cannot be identified solely with the ego. It is a level of ourselves, but it is the weakest part. And therefore, it behooves us to do the work to move beyond understanding ourselves in that way. Stop identifying with your ego. Identify with your divine nature. I could have just said it like that and it would have been done. Okay, thank you for watching this video. I appreciate you all and have a joyful and peaceful day.